Welcome.
Hi, Robert. Hi, good to see you. Hi, everybody.
That's great to see you.
Hi, Graciela.
Welcome.
Hello, Graciela.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Hi, Robert.
Hi. Lovely to see everyone. Lovely to see everyone. I hear an echo somewhere.
Non è senso
Roberto.
solo gli organizzatori, evidentemente.
Hello, welcome.
Let's see, where's the echo coming from?
Сейчас
I don't know.
Okay. That sounds better.
Володя, все, эхо нету, да?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Robert.
Hello. Good to
Robert.
see you. Good to see everybody. Wow.
Hello, Robert. Good to see everybody.
Robert. Hi, everyone.
I think this is the funnest part of all of these things, is seeing all the faces lighting up. It's like, whoa.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome, yes.
Так, Зи в зуме, его тоже нужно адмит, он просит.
Sure. Admit everybody at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just a couple of minutes for let other people to join us.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
ready anytime.
We have
Let's,
we have quite a few who have registered, so we'll see who's all shows up.
Yeah, we have quite a few people watching on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Abbiamo perso lo schermo.
Hello, Massimiliano. Good to see you.
Oh,
Again.
ciao Robert.
Oh.
We are in a training of master practitioner here with Italy.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Hello to Italy.
Yes.
Ciao,
hello.
Italia.
Ciao a tutti.
I see that we have many different places in the world here. Lots of different countries and areas.
Brazil.
Yeah, we have
Brazil, yes,
people
Gilberto's in Brazil. Yes. We have Brazil, Italy,
Argentina.
Argentina.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, Robert.
welcome.
Montreal,
Across the
Amsterdam.
pond in the United Kingdom.
UK.
Yeah.
I'm actually,
Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
The Netherlands. You too.
I'm actually
Great.
across the pond myself. I'm actually at my place here in Paris. So you can see it's dark behind me. It's nighttime.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you all for coming and joining us. I'm sure I promise it will be a very intriguing, fascinating evening here. Hello, Julian. Good to see you.
Hi, Robert. Great to see you.
New York.
Oh, Julian. Hello.
Oh, hi, Julian.
Hi, Richard and Oksana. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
No one's here.
Yes. Got a lot of the world represented here. Lincia, where are you right now?
At the moment, I'm in Germany.
In Germany.
I'm in Munich at home, kind of.
Munich.
Yeah.
I see. Hello, Edith. Edith is from
Hi.
Israel. Hello. Wow.
Good to see you.
Yes. Wow. Well, my heart keeps getting bigger every image I see on the screen.
People are so stoked about this new Sleight of Mouth, Robert. This incredible interest, enthusiasm, and it's I guess it's been what, 25 years since you wrote the last one.
Yes, exactly, 25 years. Wow.
It's a way to elicit response potential, I think.
Waiting 25 years for volume 2. Yes. Well, we're gonna maybe we
Let's
should
go
go
for
ahead
it.
and begin. What the idea is, what I want to do is, of course, share about this book, what's different from volume one, what's new, how it's organized, and also, what share. We have some excerpts. I want to be reading some excerpts from it and kind of giving an idea of what this book is about and how it can help.
Robert, you are duplicating everything you say, and whatever anybody is saying is duplicated.
Yeah, I think we have somebody needs to probably mute themselves or something like that.
I only heard the duplication when the person was speaking. I don't hear it otherwise. Duplication when the person was speaking.
Now I hear the duplication.
Okay, so let's mute a couple people here.
Maybe if everyone would be willing to mute
Will we
them.
officially start?
Let's officially
Yeah,
start.
let's
Volodya.
officially start.
Let's
Volodya,
officially start. Okay.
please, everyone, turn off your microphones. Сейчас всех выключаем.
And we'll be going on YouTube at the same time. right?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So
Так.
we're waiting for our engineer to.
Все, Володь, можно нас тогда выводить с Робертом и...
Oh, there we
Окей.
go.
Okay.
Welcome from around the world. Hello. Welcome to the book launch celebration for Sleight of Mouth Volume 2 by Robert Dilts.
Ура!
A long awaited and blessed event. We're happy to have the author here. And of course, there's that same thing going again, isn't it? Well, it's better than last time, that's for sure. Well, it's better than last time, that's for sure.
Everybody make sure you're muted if you can. I think that's
Are
the...
you your microphone off here?
No, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, look, Robert, enough said. What you're doing is of great interest. We've seen just huge enthusiasm. And as we said, it's been 25 years since volume 1. So you've probably had a long time to think about this. And this is a completely different level, isn't it? It has everything that volume 1 had, but much, much more.
But
Yes.
before I give Robert microphone, first of all, I would like to also welcome our viewers on YouTube, people who are watching us on YouTube, not on Zoom. And also for those our friends and colleagues who will watch a recording, I also welcome. We are glad to see you. And as Robert's support team, we also prepared some surprises for you. Just stay with us until the end of the program. So now we are welcoming Robert Dilts officially. Let's start
Thank
our
you.
celebration.
Thank you for joining us, Robert.
Thank you both. And this has been a lot of fun working together. We've done some Sleight of Mouth programs for Russian-speaking people. So we're ready to go to the English-speaking group here. And yes, so as you were saying, the Sleight of Mouth 1 came out in 1999 and has been by far the sort of my best-selling book of all, in all languages, actually. And I've been gathering material for these past 25 years and thinking about it and really wanting to try to make this even more accessible for people. And I'll be sharing a little bit when I go through some of the excerpts of, why now? Why did I think now is the time to do this? I do want to show, there it is. This is the book. It is available on Amazon, on barnesandnoble.com, also through various websites, the NLPU website, for example. And so what I want to do is give you an idea of what's in the book. And as we said, we're going to read some excerpts of different aspects of it and kind of go over, what is this about and how can, we benefit from it? How can hopefully the world benefit from it? I am going to have a few slides. As I said, I'll read a few excerpts, and then we'll also have time for some questions. So I'm going to switch over to the slides for a moment. So the subtitle of this volume is How Words Can Change Worlds. Volume 1 was about the magic of conversational belief change. And of course, those two things go together. And a big part of this, first of all, just for those, as an explanation, sleight of mouth, it's a play on words. Sleight of hand is a type of magic where, you create illusions through physical dexterity. But it's not only the physical dexterity, it's actually also people's assumptions and beliefs about what they think is happening. So you're playing both with some kind of, capability, some type of competence, but also utilizing expectations. And so again, it's from actually an Old Norse word. It means, crafty, cunning, artful, dexterous. And so all of those are part of what sleight of mouth is about. It came from modeling people who used language artfully, who used language, craftily or, cunningly. And it's, I call it sleight of mouth because these particular language patterns have this potential to create a kind of a magical quality. There's a sense of, surprise, a sense of something, shifting, transforming. And one of the first things I do in the book, in this book, so the volume 1 was a lot about what our beliefs, what our values, how do beliefs go about being changed, what kind of things would create change in belief. Volume 2, of course, is building upon that. But one of the things I'm doing is saying, we talk about the so-called fabric of reality. Fabric of reality was actually something that Richard Bandler, one of the co-founders of NLP, came up with a long time ago. That's saying, how do we build our realities? What out of which fabric? And one of the things I touch upon in the book is some of these deep assumptions that we have. This is from the Enlightenment era philosopher David Hume, who was pointed out that we have these very basic assumptions about how reality works and our perception of reality works. And he said these are even main assumptions of science. We tend to think of science as being something rock solid, but it is based on assumption like everything else. And 3 of these, for example, one is that the present and future are going to behave like the past. That is, that we look at the past, and one of the most natural things that we do is we say, oh, the past is going to determine our present, and it's going to continue that way in the future. And of course, while that could be true for a lot of things, we know from the work of, and even in physics, like somebody like Albert Einstein said, well, it's actually relative. It's not so linear. We also know that in our social and psychological worlds, present and future are not like the past. And we've all just been through 4 years of pandemic, and we realized that the way things were before that didn't necessarily determine how they were going to be during that or after that. Another very fundamental of these assumptions is that we can actually observe cause and effect. That what we observe, we're seeing that something is causing something. And actually, what Hume said is we really can actually really only observe, contiguity, that something happens and then something else happens. And we infer that this thing is causing that other thing to happen. And then that also leads to this idea that if we see a certain effect, then we can, assume that it was caused by a certain thing. And these assumptions are what are used often in magic. You see the little picture there is of a magician who's apparently sawed a woman in half, right? So she's gotten into a box, her head comes out one side, her legs go out the other side, then he cuts it in half and separates it. And we're like, oh my God, he's just cut her in half. But a lot of that is, based on our assumptions that are what allow these sort of illusions to happen. And that's a lot of what sleight of mouth is about. And sleight of mouth sort of tests these assumptions in many different ways. Another one of the kind of fundamental things that I'm addressing there is in the book is what the British philosopher Francis Bacon, who's also considered one of the founders of modern science, called these 3 idols of the mind. That one of our idols of the mind is that we actually think that our perceptions mirror reality, that what we see is actually real. And of course, we know that, I mean, even, even if you take the old, film, well, any kind of recording, any kind of film is actually recording little pictures, many small pictures. If you stop a video in the middle, you see a frozen picture, and it's actually putting a lot of stills together, and we think it's showing some kind of reality of movement, but it's a lot of these are built on these ways in which we kind of have illusions. If we were looking at the screen, this very same screen, through the eyes of a bee, for instance, who have many different facets of their eyes, we would see something completely different. They also register, infrared light. So we're not seeing reality as it is. We're seeing reality as we filter it. Another one of the idols that Francis Bacon talked about is this, we call the idol of the cave or the den, which is that our personal experience, we grew up in a certain family, in a certain place, at a certain time, in a certain culture, and we think that, that those our judgments and the way that we see things are objectively true. And of course, a lot of it's just a function of, the particular, again, filters, assumptions, beliefs of that particular, context. Another one that's very relevant to sleight of mouth is what Francis Bacon called the idol of the marketplace. And that is that words have a fixed meaning that's the same for everybody. He called it marketplace because, that's when we leave our cave or our den and we go out and we interact with others. And we think that, all right, when I say the words that I'm saying right now, it's going to have the same meaning to you that it does to me. And that, as we know, that's not the case, that the same word can trigger completely different associations in different people. And then finally, what he called the idols of the theater, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to put this book out now, is that I think there's so much strife created by things like politics, religion. We saw this happening with the pandemic, where you have, tons of conspiracy theories, and you have, all kinds of different, understandings and arguments about what's going on. So, by the way, each one of these is, of course, built on the other. The idol of the tribe is the most fundamental. And then based on those perceptions, we build our judgments and our personal experiences. And then that's when we go and share them in the marketplace. And then the theater is, this, how we argue about things. And each one gets more and more abstracted from the actual, sensory context of the territory. And in fact, this is where I want to start by sharing one of my first excerpts here from the book. And so I'll read this. We're trying to find several, about 4 or 5 minute excerpts just to give you a flavor of the book. And this is kind of one in the beginning that's setting the stage here. And so it's the section on what I call groundless reality. So you might want to, here I'm going to just read to you. You can kind of go into this nice receptive state, like you're being read to. I remember I always loved being read to as a child. So it says, it's an inescapable part of our human condition that we cannot derive our maps of reality completely from our ongoing sensory experience. There are many fundamental aspects of reality that are not directly perceivable through our 5 senses. We can't directly see, for instance, that the planet is a globe. We infer that through observations of other planets, and we hypothesize that our planet is spherical. And this creates expectations that we can then verify through other observations. So unlike other animals, much of our reality is constructed from information, thoughts, and words that are not part of our immediate sensory environment. And this creates a great potential for creativity and flexibility, but also an equal potential for distortion and confusion. So, belief in God, for instance, and many other religious and political beliefs, for example, are not founded upon or verified by direct measurable observation. The validations and proofs come from our inner subjective experience and the type of cognitive mechanisms that form the foundation of the sleight of mouth patterns. So we begin building much of our belief systems when we are children, before we've had a lot of life experience to draw from. Instead, we rely on the experience, expectations, and values of others. That is, we build our beliefs on secondhand experiences. So this has both advantages and disadvantages. It accelerates our ability to learn through the experience of others, but it can also proliferate and exaggerate distortions, biases, and outdated information. So it can be important to have ways of recognizing and updating beliefs based on new experience and changing conditions. I think this is a key comment here in the book. It says, in today's world of social media, Photoshop, virtual reality, fake news, and metaverse, we're increasingly called upon to navigate territories that are neither tangible nor concrete. We have to build and evaluate beliefs that cannot be connected to direct observations. And this creates what is known as groundless reality, which means that it's reality primarily based on consensus. So it's an example. Consider the surprising number of people, I was doing a lot of research on this right before writing the book, who still vehemently argue that the world is flat. The main proof is that you can't see the curvature through direct observation. Even when standing on the tallest mountain, the horizon looks level, not curved. And they argue that the photographs taken from space are doctored and a hoax, that NASA, the US Space Agency, even admits that a lot of these photos are composites. They're made from putting together other photos. And that NASA is part of a conspiracy. They maintain that NASA is a tool of the government, and the people there, working there, rely on their budget, so they need to keep that money rolling in, which is why they keep churning out material that suggests the world is round. So this type of language is in the realm of sleight of mouth. And more than any other time in history, sleight of mouth is shaping people's belief systems. So this is why it's crucial to be familiar with the patterns that we have and ways of evaluating whether they're useful or helpful, or not helpful, and even potentially harmful. So it's important to keep in mind that from the perspective of sleight of mouth, all beliefs are simply that. They are beliefs. They're part of the way that we build our maps of the world. They're not the territory. They're not the actual world. The purpose of beliefs is to help us to navigate this territory. Therefore, any belief, no matter how far-fetched or irrational it may seem, can be either helpful or harmful. And even the same belief can be helpful in some contexts and not in others. So one of the goals of this book is to provide ways of being able to know when a sleight of mouth pattern is being helpfully or potentially harmfully used. And the harmful use of sleight of mouth can create a type of limiting belief that I call a thought virus. I'm going to read a little bit more. I want to just touch on this notion of thought viruses and then kind of go back to how we do more of that in the book. So this notion of a thought virus, in essence, a thought virus is a limiting belief that has become disconnected from the surrounding, context that provides the purpose for the belief and determines its ecology. So unlike a typical limiting belief, which can be potentially updated or corrected as a result of natural changes in various aspects of our subjective experience, thought viruses are frequently based on other generalizations or beliefs, which are often other limiting beliefs. So this happens, when this happens, the thought virus becomes its own self-validating reality instead of serving a larger ecology. So here you get what's known as confirmation bias. That is, and it's big part of what sleight of mouth is attempting to sort of counteract. So the notion of confirmation bias is that you have what's called attention bias, which means I only pay attention to the things that support the belief I have. You have what's called, a memory bias. I only remember the things that fit that belief and I delete everything else. You also have what's called interpretation bias, that even if I'm looking at the same things that you are, I'm interpreting it differently. And all of those just keep holding this in place, and we see it all over the place. And of course, that is even facilitated by the so-called, algorithmic bubbles that we live in through the internet. Since if you think about how much of our realities now and many decisions that we have to make are not because we've been directly there, but we're getting fed things through the internet. So we really, we're in this very interesting kind of experience where we're not directly connected with what is going on, but we still have to make decisions and build beliefs about that. So, in other words, thought viruses are self-reinforcing, limiting or damaging beliefs to ourselves or others, built as a result of other people's thoughts, words, and beliefs, rather than our own personal subjective experience of the territory. So they're maps of maps, and therefore naturally not corrected. And many thought not corrected by our new experiences. That's the whole idea of confirmation bias. So these viruses can infect our mind and nervous system, just like a physical virus can infect the body, or a computer virus affect the heart. Sorry, that comes to the heart. It can infect the heart, but the computer. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I just want to say the last part of this is that, computers have an antivirus program that recognizes the virus code based on its structure and removes it. And similarly, our body immunizes itself by recognizing these things, different kinds of genetic codes of the virus. So we can do the same thing with our own neurolinguistic programming. And one of the goals of the book is to provide ways to examine beliefs, detect those which are potentially harmful, and reprogram to help them become more useful. So pause there and kind of come back to our slides for just a second. So this idea then, first of all, sleight of mouth, it's not simply just a bunch of verbal formulas. It's how words sort of reorganize and rearrange the way we experience things. And so it's not the words that are the issue. It's how the words are resonating or are creating associations. So let me go back to the slides for just a second. And so the idea here is, I'll go back to our idols, our thought viruses. So one of the things the book, of course, goes over is the structure then of belief. So if we're going to create this kind of virus detection, just like any other, device or even the mechanism of our immune system, we've got to be able to break something down to look at its structure, and that's what allows us to evaluate it. So beliefs have this, basic structure of in NLP that's called either an equivalence or a cause effect. Some kind of if then, or this, so X causes Y or means Y, or Y because of X. And one of the things I'm doing in the book is I'm looking at, I'm going to be applying all of these different patterns to sort of 6 common limiting beliefs, which are things like, if I speak, people will laugh at me, or no matter what I do, I'll never get enough, or I've had this problem for a long time, it's going to be hard to change, or I'm not capable because I failed in the past, or what I want is not important because other people's needs take priority. Or and another one here that relates very relevant to sleight of mouth is, I'm not a native speaker or skilled with words, so it's going to be difficult to learn sleight of mouth. So these are examples of kinds of beliefs, and one of the things I'm doing in the book is I'm illustrating how each pattern would work with respect to these beliefs. And one of the things that I'm doing is we go over certain principles then. How do we evaluate one of these belief statements? And I'm not going to necessarily read through all of these, but these principles are things like, energy follows attention. Words direct our attention. Language frames and reframes experiences. The idea of holons and holarchies is just that we're part of bigger wholes. Everything as a whole is part of a bigger whole, is made up of smaller holes. Deal with things like the pyramid levels of change. A big key is looking for negative identity judgments in that regard, and doing what we call balancing ego and soul, things that create resonance. So, as I said, I'm not going to read all of those, but that allows us to do certain things like find red flags for potential limiting beliefs and thought viruses. So one thing is if something's stated in a problem frame instead of an outcome frame, it's likely to have certain, create certain kinds of associations. Divisiveness, things that pit one part of a whole on, as we would say, against another. Again, I said negative identity judgments, assumptions of negative intention, and what is called othering, away from versus towards intentions. And then absence of multiple intelligences means when you simply get into a verbal reality, just verbal argumentation alone that's not grounded in any other of our experiences, that means you're just playing, essentially you're playing games with words, and it's not coming back to anything that is meaningful. There's no humanity in it, etc. So some of the other things we work with or go over in the book are skills of sleight of mouth. Some of you will recognize this idea of moving from a crash state to a coach state, which means moving from let's call it a state where our filters are in sort of a negative state to a more open place. Developing emotional intelligence, welcoming obstacles, taking meta position, which means sort of self-observation, and then engaging multiple intelligences, not just verbal rational intelligence. That's one of the things that makes sleight of mouth become really toxic, is it's just a bunch of verbal argumentation. So in fact, I'd like to read another little, actually, I'm going to first go a little further. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm going over the different sleight of mouth patterns. There's 14 of them. And we're kind of, for each one, I'm reviewing them, giving a definition. This is some of the stuff that I've been gathering for the 25 years. There's a definition of the pattern. There's a core question that establishes the mindset, because one of the things I'm saying is that these patterns are not just a verbal formulation. They're actually a mindset. They come from a mindset. I'm giving examples of the patterns from well-known historical figures. One of the things I've done has been really important is to get jokes or humorous anecdotes that illustrate the patterns. A lot of humor is based on sleight of mouth. I'm also using examples of how Milton Erickson, the very, very important figure in NLP, he was a pioneer in hypnotherapy and psychiatry, how he used them, each one of them, and then applying those patterns, as I said, to those 6 common limiting beliefs. So what I thought I would do now is to give you a little excerpt from like one of these chapters that will give you an idea of how I'm kind of piecing those together. And I think that will maybe be interesting to get a flavor of how again, putting all these different things together and what that's like. And so I'm going to just read a couple of pages from the section on consequences. So consequence is one of the sleight of mouth patterns. And as it says in the book, it says, beliefs have consequences. Some consequences are intended, others are not. Some are positive, others are problematic. Even beliefs that sound positive can produce problematic effects. A belief like, I'm a capable person, so I don't need help, for example, can produce problems if taken to an extreme. There are times when it's useful and necessary to ask for help. Sometimes belief produces a surprising secondary effect. A belief like, the only way to get what I want is to focus on what is my own best interest. That can lead to enhanced cooperation with others if the person thinks, well, I'm going to get my needs met better if I cooperate with others rather than fight with them. So helping others is in my best interest. So again, you can't always evaluate something, but on its face, its face value. So in fact, more than the content of the belief, the consequence of holding that belief is a really important factor, whether it's going to be, a useful or a limiting belief. So the sleight of mouth pattern of consequence involves directing attention to an effect, either positive or negative, of that belief. So, as I said, identifying any of these sleight of mouth patterns involves taking on a particular mindset. So here's an example of, this kind of mindset of consequence. So it's a little story. Father O'Malley answers his phone. The voice asks, hello, is this Father O'Malley? He replies, it is. This is the IRS, the government tax agency. Can you help us, if possible? Do you know Pat McCormick? I do. Is he a member of your congregation? He is. Did he donate $10,000 to your church? He will. The implication of the anecdote is that, Mr. McCormick has declared to the tax authorities that he's given the church $10,000 and is taking it as a write-up on his taxes. Given that that's a fairly large amount, this IRS representative is checking Father O'Malley to see whether that's, he made the donation. There are going to be naturally negative consequences for Mr. McCormick if he's lied. And of course, there are positive consequences for Father O'Malley's church to receive the donation. So his response that he will indicates that Mr. McCormick has probably not actually made the donation, but Father O'Malley realizes that he has an opportunity. If he says no, Mr. McCormick gets into trouble and the church still doesn't get the money. However, he knows that as a consequence of his declaration, Mr. McCormick will certainly now donate the money to avoid getting in trouble. So that's would be an example of like thinking in terms of consequences. Another anecdote, police officer pulls a guy over for speeding. The officer says, can I see your driver's license? Says, I don't have one. It was suspended when I got my fifth, driving under the influence violation. Can I see the owner's registration card for the vehicle? That's not my car. I stole it. Your car is stolen? That's right. But come to think of it, I saw the owner's card in the glove box when I was putting my gun in there. There's a gun in the glove box? Yes, sir. That's where I put it after I shot and killed the woman who owns the car and stuffed her body in the trunk. There's a body in the trunk? Yes, sir. So hearing this, the officer immediately calls his captain. The car is surrounded by police vehicles. Captain approaches the driver to handle this tense situation. Captain says, sir, can I see your license? Sure, here it is. It's valid. Whose car is this? It's mine, officer. Here's the owner's card. Driver owned the car. Could you slowly open your glove box so I can see if there's a gun in it? Yes, sir, there's no gun in it. Sure enough, there's nothing in the glove box. Would you mind opening your trunk? I was told there's a body in it. No problem. Trunk is open. There's no body. Captain says, I don't understand it. The officer who stopped you said you told him that you didn't have a license, stole the car, had a gun in the glove box, and there was a dead body in the trunk. Yeah, and I'll bet that liar told you I was speeding too. So, all right, the driver in this silly story is obviously intentionally creating a chain of consequences to try to discredit the officer who's pulled him over for speeding. And the driver makes a series of statements that have more serious implications. And of course, the whole idea here is that if I can start to invalidate one of these consequences, I'm invalidating more of them. And so this is an example of like putting this notion of consequence that you can use it to create and shift realities. There's a number of other examples there. I'm not gonna go over those for the moment. But you get the idea. I'm wanting to illustrate, so just to give you a taste of it, I'm trying to illustrate these to try to bring them alive with these examples. And then we go and I'll show how, for example, how somebody like Erickson used it. In fact, maybe I'll just at least go to that example. So actually one of the things I show is, anyway, it's actually an interesting example from the Matthew in the New Testament. It's a little example where Jesus, when he's departed from this place, his two blind men are following him, crying and saying, Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he was coming to the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, do you believe that I'm able to do this? And they said to him, yes, Lord. And he touched their eyes, saying, according to your faith, it will be done to you. So that's an interesting example of using consequence. Do you believe that this will happen? In fact, I point out that Jesus was quoted as going, so far to assert, if you can believe, all things are possible to him that believes. Then I say, speaking of Jesus, there's a fascinating case involving the use of consequences in the work of Milton Erickson. Erickson was on the staff of at a psychiatric hospital where there was a young patient who called himself Jesus. He paraded around as the Messiah, wore a sheet draped around him, attempted to impose Christianity on people. One day, Erickson approached him on the hospital grounds and said, I understand you have experience as a carpenter. since Jesus was supposedly a carpenter's son and would have worked in his youth as a carpenter, the patient could only say yes, you know. Then Erickson went on to ask him if he was interested in serving mankind. Of course, that would be a consequence of being Jesus as well. The young man had to agree. So Erickson then mentioned that the psychology laboratory needed some bookcases built and used the two consequences as leverage to involve this young man in a project to build them, which gave him something productive to do, brought him more grounded relationships as well as appreciation from others. And according to Erickson, the person eventually became a productive handyman. So these are then examples of, okay, we can take these patterns and then use them in a positive way. So I'm going to just then quickly come back, kind of find, we're on the final steps here, but I want to share one other thing about the book, and then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time for some Q&A here. One of the other things I'm doing is then saying, okay, how do you use these patterns in combination? And one of the things I go over are the so-called patterns of plausible inference by a mathematician, George Polya, who, you know, said, as a mathematician, he said, you know, you're in this interesting dilemma in a way where you have an equation that you think is valid, but you can't test it for an infinite number of numbers. It would take you an infinite number of times. So you have to, at a certain point, assume that it's valid. And there's certain things that we do that we infer that it's valid. Once again, I won't go over all of these, but they are things like verifying consequences, or inference from analogy, or disproving the opposite, disproving the converse. And this is one of the things I use to show how these patterns can be used in combinations to accomplish certain things. So one of the things I go over is the so-called Socratic method. And Socrates used, you know, these kind of sleight of mouth patterns to unpack belief statements and examine assumptions. Somebody like Lincoln used them to challenge and transform thought viruses related to racism and other things. And you see, there's a little tiny picture on by these that are showing in the book. There's a little structure that I'm saying, okay, here's the structure of what this process is. Flipping perception of reality. This is Mark Antony, and this going over one of the sort of the famous Mark Antony speech where he is able to completely change a crowd's perception. Inspiring fervent motivation. You can use sleight of mouth to really motivate people. This is one of the examples I use is from Shakespeare, also Shakespeare's Henry V, of getting people to go in being willing to risk their lives, even lose their lives. And kind of going on from that, creating confidence. I go over Dwight Eisenhower's message to the Allied troops on D-Day, you know, because again, they're going into some kind of very, you know, dangerous situation. Gandhi connecting with something beyond individual identity. Gandhi, you know, led people in this sort of opposite of Eisenhower and Henry V. Instead of going into battle, of, you know, going into nonviolent space. And also go over Oprah Winfrey, who's a very interesting example of somebody who has a very, let's say, a life that it would not be very predictable, you know, that she born in poverty, you know, to an unwed mother, you know, was molested and had a, you know, was pregnant at you know 14. This is not somebody you would expect to be the first woman billionaire, let alone billionaire of color. And yet she really completely transformed her own life through her belief. So there I'm going to do one other example here. I want to read a little bit for another excerpt just quickly, and then sort of show how that's worked in the book. And then we'll hopefully have some time for our some Q&A. Sorry to be going so quickly here, but there's a lot to cover. Anyway, so this part is called the using sleight of mouth to challenge and transform thought viruses. So sleight of mouth patterns are sometimes effective in situations where other belief change techniques and interventions are difficult to apply or ineffective. Sleight of mouth is often necessary in order to deal with thought viruses, for example. So as I pointed out already, the thought virus is a special, class of limiting belief. Typical limiting belief is a generalization drawn from our experience and consequently can be updated as a result of the experience. Thought viruses, on the other hand, are limiting beliefs that are not based on our direct experiences. They're drawing from other assumptions. So, it's probably nowhere more evident than in situations involving political, philosophical, theological things. So within the framework of sleight of mouth, the goal of all speeches, oratory, debate, etc., is to create, reinforce, challenge, reframe, or recode beliefs or belief system. So sometimes to effectively install a new belief, it's necessary to create doubt with respect to the existing one. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I've got to create doubt with respect to the current belief in order to shift it. I can't just directly shift it. So I use here, here's an example is Abraham Lincoln's use of sleight of mouth to invalidate what was known as pro-slavery theology, which meant that people who considered themselves, devout Christians could justify slavery for various reasons. So this was from a speech he did in 1858. So he says, so here's an example of how sleight of mouth would be used and the kind of things that where we start to see that it could have truly a transformational potential. So he says, the sum of pro-slavery theology seems to be this: slavery is not universally right or universally wrong. It's better for some people to be slaves, and in such cases, it's the will of God that they be, as such. So Lincoln says, well, there's certainly no contending against the will of God, but there's some difficulty in applying it to particular cases. For instance, if we suppose the Reverend Dr. Ross has a slave named Sambo, and the question is it the will of God that Sambo shall remain a slave or be set free? It says the Almighty gives no audible answer to the question, and his revelation, the Bible, gives none, or at least none that such admits of a squabble, a conflict as to its meaning. No one thinks of asking Sambo's opinion on it, so at last it comes down to this: Dr. Ross is going to decide the question. And while he considers it, he sits in the shade with his gloves on his hands and subsists on the bread that Sambo was earning in the burning sun. If he decides that God wills Sambo to continue a slave, he retains his own comfortable position. If he decides that God wills Sambo to be free, he has to walk out of the shade, throw off his glove, and delve for his own bread. Is he going to be actuated by that perfect impartiality which has been considered to make favorable decisions? He says, but slavery is good for some people. As a good thing, slavery is strikingly peculiar in this: it is the only good thing that no one ever seeks for themselves. He says, nonsense. Wolves devouring lambs, not because it's good for their own greedy maws, but because it's good for the lambs. So here you have a really interesting example of putting a number of these patterns together in order to accomplish, a particular thing and, particular result. And so here I want to show you the way we would look at that in the book. So in the book, just to show you a little bit from the book here, looks like this would be this Antonia Mitza has done some nice illustrations. This is about, examining these examples. And so we sort of mapping it out. I'm not going to read all the small print here, but you see we're sort of mapping it out, showing the combinations of these patterns and how they go together, like a kind of a flow chart. And then from that, sort of summarizing, well, how could, what is the essence of this that could be used? And there's some, and just some interesting examples here. You see, here's sort of taking the essence of what Lincoln was doing and applying it to one of these limiting beliefs that I was mentioning earlier. So we map out a set of steps. What's the limiting belief to be transformed? In this example, it's, okay, if I speak, people are going to laugh at me. What's another way to say the cause or the evidence that, that has different implications? So in other words, I redefine speak to express myself. So it's not just when I speak, when I express myself. And instead of saying that, now the other number 3 is, what's another way to say the effect that is, slightly different? So instead of people will laugh at me, people will find it humorous. So if I express myself, people will find it humorous. So now and you see like Lincoln was sort of doing that. You're sort of reframing some of these key words to something else. And like he reframed, Lincoln, for example, reframed that it's better for some people to that it's good for some people. So he already, by changing that word, he allows him to go somewhere else with it. So here it says, well, one of a positive consequence of this is that it gives you appreciation for people who are, to have the courage to express themselves. One of the things that Lincoln was doing was also using what's called a counterexample, where he said, well, if it's a good thing, it's a good thing that nobody ever wants for themselves. And so here you might say, well, I find what you're saying to be, quite serious rather than humorous. So I'm not laughing at it. So there's a counterexample. I'm not laughing at you. And then he used this analogy, the wolves eating the lambs. You could use an analogy to say, well, other birds, thought the ugly duckling was humorous until it turned into a swan. So you're opening up these, other possibilities, and we're showing that the idea is to show that what, one of these historical figures does can be mapped into our own way of applying it. And so that, as you see there, then it gives you, here's a formula, and you can kind of almost take any belief and fill that in there and then use that particular strategy. So, so kind of as the closing then, and then we do have time for at least a few questions here. I just want to, I'm going to come back to the slides for just a moment and say here, you go, there's a different one. So we go over all those different ideas. The last thing is I kind of go over how then the effective use of sleight of mouth is often driven by what the patterns of genius. Now, I wrote a series of book called Strategies of Genius, and there's certain patterns like, having high developed use of imagination, maintaining an orientation towards a positive future, using multiple perspectives, multiple intelligences. So one of the things I show also in the book is how when you take the sleight of mouth and use it in with these patterns of genius, that's where you're really able to make these world transforming positive uses. So I think that's another bit that I think is very interesting in the book. It's weaving together ultimately sleight of mouth with strategies of genius. And of course, we're going to be doing a workshop on all of this next month, February 17th and 18th, and the 25th and 24th and 25th. And of course, you can get more information at 7007. Just think, the 007, the spy, or there's also information at nlpu.com. So that's kind of a very quick review. It's you can see there's a lot of richness in this. Something, as I said, I've been putting a lot of attention and work into for a number of years. So now I'm curious what kind of questions. I know that I was thinking that maybe Oksana and Richard would have some questions. Maybe others have questions that you could put in the chat or in the YouTube.
Robert, thank you very much for beautiful presentation.
Yeah, there are questions on YouTube, and of course our audience here on Zoom has some. But first, Oksana has some really good news for everyone who registered for this book launch celebration. What's the good news, Oksana?
We prepared for you little surprises and also presents for our participants of Sleight of Mouth 1. So first of all, we for all of you who registered to our book launch celebration, we give $25 coupon discount.
Yeah, coupon code or whatever you want.
And it will be available for you on email. So if you registered, you will get an email after book launch with promo code, which you can use for paying for Sleight of Mouth 1.
coming
or
up in February,
yeah, or
the Sleight of Mouth 2 coming up in October, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
and also
that's not all.
and also you can use this $25 in order to, what is the word, to prolong or
Yeah, well, see, you get 3 months free access to the videos
Yes.
whenever you buy the course, the workshop, and you can use this $25 to extend this for up to a year and many times if you like.
also we've been decided to grant an access to the very first recorded
Right.
workshop.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Way back in 1987, that's before a lot of us were even born, not me, of course.
When I had a beard and
Not
a
me.
lot more
You had a
hair.
beard. Yeah, you look great, and it's a great suit. Anyway, Robert had a seminar on Sleight of Mouth there, and it's amazing how much it's all the foundation is already there in 1987. Although Robert didn't write the book or publish the book until 1999, right?
Yeah.
So we are granting, we are given as a gift, as a present for our the whole course in personal accounts for our Sleight of Mouth 1 participants.
Yeah.
So it's going to be available since January 28 for whole year.
That's cool. So if you join Robert for this workshop in February, you get this video of the 1987 workshop free.
But that's not all.
Wow. Okay.
The
There's
third-
more.
That's more. The third surprise, we ask our engineer Z to create a payment plan, because some of you ask us the price is going up January 31st,
That's true.
and you still can use this discount. And if it's hard for you to pay whole sum together, we created a payment plan for 3 months.
Yeah, I believe it's 4 monthly payments of the 25% of whatever the price is at that time.
So we really invite you to join us, and you can freeze the price for 1/4 of the price,
Okay, I got
and
it.
then you can pay through every month further.
We really think that what Robert's doing with this Sleight of Mouth and even more so with the volume 2 is really not only interesting, it's important. This is so relevant to the world we live in and the difficulties we're facing. We want everybody to have access to this. That's really what we're trying to do. So that's the idea of the payment plan. We're trying to make it a little bit easier.
Okay.
Positive consequence. This is there are good consequences.
Yeah, and it's also really great news that the Sleight of Mouth 1, which is upcoming in February, is the first part, and then we will have another one in October.
Yes.
We just produced this program, and we have also Sleight of Mouth 3 upcoming for continuation. So
That's
it's
right.
really a lot to learn, and it's really
And there's some Robert had so much to share. It's you can't get it into one volume, you can't get it into 2. So we're waiting for more, of course. A lot of people are asking in YouTube, how can they get the book? Zlata is asking, when will this? When can I get this in Canada? When will it be available? And
So,
other people are
as I said,
asking.
it is available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and it's available both in print, but also as an ebook. And so it is out there. And I mean, and you could also, if necessary, you could also go to the nlpu.com website, and you can order it from there. So it's
Another question here, Robert. What do you think is the best book on modeling? I assume modeling with NLP would have to be one of the candidates.
one of the candidates for sure. I mean, of course, it depends. Unfortunately, there are not that many books on NLP modeling, even though NLP comes from modeling. This is one of the reasons I wrote Modeling with NLP. I know that David Gordon and Graham Dawes wrote an interesting book on modeling as well. That's the title is escaping me at the moment. but I don't know. I mean, I think those are really the only two that come to mind that are directly, about modeling.
Great, great.
Mhm.
And here's another. It seems as though sleight of mouth is geared towards shifting beliefs. Can it be
Yes.
used also to shift identity?
Well, that's an interesting question. It depends on how we define identity, because there are different definitions of identity. If we define identity as something related to our role and our mission, which I sometimes do at the top of the pyramid, then obviously our beliefs will influence that sense of our role or our mission. And so, but I think if we take our deepest identity, that is something that would be expressed through beliefs. And it's the expression of that identity would definitely be changed. I mean, and in some cases dramatically, even if the identity isn't, I tend to like to think that identity is a bit like the DNA of our being. And that DNA, there's genetics and then epigenetics, and epigenetics are how that DNA gets expressed. And so again, I think beliefs can definitely influence the expression of our identity.
Thanks. Nuncia has been waiting patiently with her hand up.
Nuncia, yes, I see you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to share briefly. I'm still waiting for the book to be delivered. I ordered from Amazon, but I enjoyed the pre-read through Amazon. And actually, the first learning I got out was how do I talk to me? The sleight of mouth.
Right. How do we talk to ourselves? It's it's our own inner voice. I mean, that's really what the thought virus is, Nancy. I mean, that's a great, thank you for sharing that, because thought virus is actually something that we're thinking to ourselves. It's not only something that we think about the outside world, but it's
which language do I use, but also loud internally, but also I can talk to me aloud, with affirmations.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. And it's a good filter. I think the sleight of mouth helps it really recognize some of these patterns. So
thank you.
Bravo. Good sharing.
And Dennis also has a question.
Yes.
Welcome, Dennis.
Please.
Could you unmute? There you go.
I can't hear you, Dennis.
Can't hear you, Dennis.
Are you unmuted?
Yeah, he's unmuted, but still can't hear him for some reason.
Maybe.
Dennis, let's go to Christina and see if you can solve the technical problem there, and then we'll come back to you.
Well,
Christina.
I got the first book from 2000 in German.
Yes.
And I would like to know from Bielefeld.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
I would like to know, will there be a German translation?
I sure hope so. I mean, it's only just come out, so I don't know yet, but I imagine either, because I think that first volume was published by Jungfermann Verlag, and that maybe they'll publish the second one. Otherwise, I know we have Castlemount would likely publish it in German if Jungfermann doesn't. So
but we have to wait a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to just have to wait a little bit, but I'm sure it's coming.
Yes.
And
yes,
so certainly the volume 1 is available in many languages.
Yes. In a lot of languages. Yes.
I'm sure the German will be one of the languages for the volume.
Yeah, because I think that's, like I said, it's one of the books that's one of the best sellers. So I think the publishers would like to have the volume 2. So. Yeah.
We are also planning to do 7007 portal for international translations too. So the workshop which has come in will also going to translate, and German will be one of the first languages, I think.
Of course.
So I was also thinking maybe David could also possibly put his question in the chat, but I see that Klaus Peter also has his hand up, so maybe we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Klaus Peter Pfeiffer, welcome.
Yeah.
Ask to unmute.
Ask to unmute. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hello, Klaus-Peter. It's good to see you.
Yes, great to see you as well.
I know that one thing I know about Klaus-Peter is that he himself is a magician. So
yes, practicing my sleight of hand while listening to you.
yes,
It's always good to go into the magic field to
yes,
make these assumptions. But anyhow, I was disturbed. I'm interested also in the German version. I didn't get this. Probably you and authored that.
yeah.
The second question is this? I read every book of you, of course, but is this more a theoretical book, or is this more towards practical exercises, or is it a mix of both? And what is the relationship to this first book?
Yeah, there certainly is. There's going to be some mix, but it's definitely intended, Klaus-Peter, to be, like I was showing with the sort of diagrams and everything. It's intended to be practical, that you should be able to take that, and it takes you through how to apply it. It gives you examples of how to apply each pattern and then how to apply the combinations. So I really wanted it to be, first of all, to clarify, because so many people are intrigued by sleight of mouth, but it's a little bit tricky. It's not the simplest thing to learn, partially because it's dealing with these very, fundamental aspects of our experience. So I really wanted to make it so that you would be able to read it and put it into practice.
Okay, and this will also be in the workshop.
Yes, absolutely. In the workshop, what part of what we're doing in the workshops, we'll actually have people bringing beliefs that they want to work with, either their own or ones that they have with their clients, and then we'll go through we'll go through exercises and breakouts where people will actually be working with those beliefs.
Great, good. And the German version will come out when?
Don't know yet. Don't know yet.
Don't know yet. Okay, I will work for the German English version. Thank you so much, Robert, and nice to see you. And all back to you. Good luck. Thank you.
I know we're time, but I'm willing to take a couple more if people are okay to stay a little bit. Happy to.
Just to so many people are congratulating you. People are just really, really, really stoked. It's so good to see it. And a couple people have their hand up here. Mitchell's next. Thanks for sticking around a little bit, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
I also see that
Mitchell
Richard is physically
Yes,
holding.
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Mitchell.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
Can you hear me? Yes. Hang on a second. I just spilled water. I got so excited. Robert, I had a quick question for you, actually two questions. One is I work with a lot of creatives. I'm an NLP master coach practitioner. And, we work a lot with limiting beliefs. And I was curious, people have a lot of limiting beliefs around, their ability to be successful. They may know they're creative, but they may not see their path to can I make money doing this? Can I have the kind of career I dream of? And I was curious at in terms of doing reframes. I work with them on trying to reframe. They're going from a problem frame to an outcome frame. And I was curious if there's, and I hate to ask for hacks, but I do a lot of this on Zoom very quickly. What are some of your kind of quick go-to ways to create that kind of shift where they go from basically being in a place of no possibility or not being able to imagine it to, oh wow, yeah, I can be successful. So
what's interesting about that is it's one that this is where also combining the sleight of mouth with strategies of genius becomes really interesting. So for me, one of the things that I would do, the sort of Henry V example is a good one there, because it's like, he's got people who are out, they're outnumbered 5 to 1, they think it's impossible. And part of what he's doing is kind of bringing people into the future and just saying, if you put yourself, you got to use imagination to put yourself into that future that you want. Mm-hmm. And then looking back and saying, basically it's what stops you from getting there. And there, I think, for me, there's some really great examples in the book about Oprah Winfrey, because she would be, to me, the other sort of very practical example of someone, right? Here's somebody, as I said, born in poverty, of African descent. This is not the person you would expect to become who she became. And one of the interesting things she says is, you don't become what you want, you become what you believe. And that to me was like a really great thing. And she said, that the biggest discovery in history is that if you change your attitude, you're going to change your life. And so, first of all, I think just beginning to create, so what one of the Sleight of Mouth patterns is called, it's called a metaframe. This realization that you don't become what you want, you don't even become what you do, but you're going to become what you believe. So what are those beliefs? And then kind of putting people into an experience of success and then saying, what are the beliefs that you have there for yourself? So those would be some of there's plenty of other things, but like just sort of as a basic beginning, that's
so it's like future gazing, put them in that reality, and
exactly.
Then say, what is it? What beliefs would you need, or do you have?
Well, in that reality in the future, what do you have? So one of the things that I talk about that Henry does is he has people project themselves like 20 years after this battle and saying, if you survive, you're going to be stripping your sleeves and showing your scars and saying, look what I had in the battle. And he said, and all the people this is interesting, all the people that weren't there are going to be jealous. They're going to wish they were there, instead of everybody starts off by wishing they weren't there. And they're going, they're going to wish they were there because of, this is like, it creates, this is the most biggest life event in your life. Why would you want to run away from it? This is the best thing you can do. It's kind of like really getting that future orientation. That's why I say it's away from, not towards. It's positive identity. So instead of negative identity, like I'm a loser or I can't do. So it's like you're using Sleight of Mouth to build this set of positive beliefs.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. And just a quick note, will you be doing Sleight of Mouth during a time that's a little bit better for US folks?
But, yeah, we're trying to get as big of a as we can. But one thing, Mitchell, is that we will be recording it, and so people would have an ability to also look at it afterwards. But who knows in the future? I think as a result of this book, I'll probably be doing a bunch of different programs live and different, in person in different places as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also our engineers usually giving us recordings almost immediately after workshop finished. So even if you skip like one day or a couple days, you will have between modules, you will have possibility to watch them immediately. And also we have very warm community. Usually if you participated in programs we produced, so that we have very warm community. We have very active participants in chat, in private chat, so you can even make an agreement with people, meet before modules or even afterwards, and do exercises if you skip part of workshop, for example.
It's a very active community, for sure.
Yeah, so that's for sure. I think one of the great things about what you guys do, Oksana and Richard, is really creating and supporting that community. It's a huge benefit. I know again. I see there's two more that Phil has his hand up, but also Richard has been physically raising his hand.
Yeah, and Richard was already on the screen.
So maybe let's just do these last two, and then.
Thank you.
And I'm touched that I'm seeing that pretty much everybody's staying on. So thank you. I hope it's interesting. So let's start. Shall we go with Phil and then Richard?
Great.
Okay.
Phil.
Okay. Well, my question was very close to Mitchell's, so I'll skip my question.
Okay.
Just point out the book you mentioned, the modeling book. Oh, I don't think you can read it. Gordon and Dawn.
Oh, good, David.
Expanding Your World.
Yeah. What's the title again? First part.
Expanding Your World, Modeling the Structure of Experience. David Gordon.
Yeah. Great. But they call that model.
I did a quick search.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Phil. A good modeling book. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Richard.
There's somebody, just a sec, please. Somebody in YouTube is also suggesting Fran Burgess, the Bumper Bundle book.
Oh yeah, Bumper Bundle. But yes, that's great. Yes, I also do have that book. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Whoever mentioned that. Yes.
And Richard.
Okay.
Okay. We connected again. That's great. Yeah, I love your work, Robert. I think you revolutionized what we do in language and communication, actually. So you're referenced everywhere by the greats. And so, for me, it's I'm in sales. So I want to use this in objection handling and inoculating against objections, things like that, the language patterns. Any thoughts on that? Because I'd like to apply it to sales.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's some, I mean, pretty much almost every single one of these patterns can be used in sales. Obviously this whole thing about consequences is important. But one other thing I guess I would want to say, Richard, is that this is also where some of the skills become super important. Meaning there's skills that involve pacing and leading, there's skills that involve getting rapport, and those are all part of what make give them, the words their magic. So I do want to say it's not just a bunch of, here's a bunch of just verbal hacks that you use.
Yeah.
And I think, so I would just give the caveat that you want to, in sales especially, you want to be using this so that you're not just trying to, the person doesn't feel like you're just kind of trying to, push them or convince them. And so one of the big ones that we would use there has to do with what's called changing frame size, which means that somebody might go, oh, this is too expensive. Well, if you change the frame size, which means I can change it from like in time. So from 1 year to 5 years to 10 years. And well, if you look at the value of this over the next 10 years, you're saving XXXX. So a lot of it is kind of getting a sense of when the person is having this objection, what's creating it. So the one of the main patterns also is this pattern of intent, which is, okay, what is the intention of the objection? And then I kind of respond to that intention. And then another one of the patterns is sort of redefining. So let's say somebody goes, it's too expensive. You might go, what's another way to talk about too expensive that gives you some other, you're saying, well, yes, it does have great value. I mean, it's extremely valuable, So, those are the kind of things that, like I say, the tricky part is you can't just do it from the words alone. It depends upon who you're speaking to and having a little bit of knowing, well, what's important to them. But absolutely, each one of these can be used to get over a hurdle or an objection.
Yeah, I love that.
One of the things, one of the examples I specifically give, for instance, in the book from a sales perspective, a famous example of Heinz, the food producer. They make a ketchup, and the ketchup is slow, and people used to complain about it. And they took this thing that was a problem, the fact that it was slow coming out, and they actually used that as a positive, So they would show some other, like ketchup blurping out.
Oh, like dripping.
And theirs is coming out nice and slow, and they're going, "Look at what great, quality."
Real tomatoes.
So I think that's one of the other things you do. This whole notion of redefining is big part of sales.
Wow.
So
I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Richard. Me too. All right. I guess.
There's more questions, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up, Robert. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
All of these questions we can take to the workshop. The good news is we'll have plenty of time next month. So hopefully, if you have them, we'll definitely have time for them there.
We are invite you to join our community chat in Telegram for all community. It's the link is in the description on the video if you're watching us on YouTube. And you can join there and also ask questions. We will be there, can answer. And also, we are very much looking forward to this journey of Sleight of Mouth in February, and invite you to join us. It will be great. And
yeah, you won't want to miss this one.
no. And also, it's legendary because. And also, right now, I invite you guys who are with us on Zoom to turn on your microphones and
let's congratulate Robert.
Let's congratulate Robert.
This is our celebration.
Thanks, Robert.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Very much congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you, Robert.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Good morning. See you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Tot ziens.
Hope to see you next month.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, our team.
See you. Bye. Bye.